Far beyond the outer edge of the Milky Way, the Varelians had watched the stars for millions of years. Their civilization was known for peace, knowledge, and quiet exploration. They believed every world had its own story, and they made it their mission to listen, not interfere. But something about the blue planet near the Sol star, called Earth by its people, refused to stay quiet. For decades, Earth had pulsed with strange quantum signals, growing stronger each year, as if calling out. At first, the Varelians thought it was a mistake, just background noise. But the signal didn't fade. It evolved. It became patterned, intelligent, and then one day, it matched the pulse of the oldest, most dangerous cosmic code the Varelians had in their archives, one that hadn't been seen since the dark age of galactic wars, before even the Varelians themselves had learned to fly. Curious and a little afraid, the Varelians launched their most advanced research ship, Orelon, toward Earth. Its silver hull shimmered like liquid, invisible to the human eye, its crew trained in both science and diplomacy. They hoped they would find a new ally, maybe even a young civilization that needed guidance. But as they entered Earth's orbit and activated their cloaking systems, what they saw didn't match any of their peaceful expectations. The planet was alive with chaos. Cities glittered with light, but war machines rolled through deserts. Skyscrapers reached the clouds, while forests burned far below. Satellites buzzed the atmosphere, some for communication, others for surveillance. Earth wasn't just surviving, it was struggling with itself at every level. League xenologist Jin Talers initiated data collection. She began with human communication networks, curious about how these beings express themselves. In seconds, the Orelon was flooded with waves of data: books, music, news, videos, raw streams of emotion and information. It was too much at first, but their systems adapted, organizing centuries of human thought. What they found left them in stunned silence. In all their years of watching planets grow, never had they seen a species so contradictory. Humanity created beauty through music, painted galaxies with imagination, and reached for the stars with machines of fire. But at the same time, they had fought countless wars, built weapons beyond reason, and destroyed each other with frightening creativity. Every step forward seemed to come after something had been broken, shattered, or lost. Jin stared at a war documentary and then flipped to a science podcast. She moved from a love poem to a missile test. It made no sense, until it started to. This wasn't randomness. This was rhythm. Humanity's pattern of destruction and growth wasn't an accident. It was a method, a design. They didn't just adapt to chaos. They thrived in it. It was as if the species had been built not to live in peace, but to evolve through struggle. This idea was terrifying and strangely exciting. While the crew continued to observe, one of the ship's AI cores flagged a warning. Earth's conflict patterns, cultural shifts, and technological bursts weren't natural. They mirrored old galactic war signatures, the kind seen in engineered species, designed for survival in collapsing systems. The AI suggested something impossible. Earth might not be a random cradle of life. It might be a test site, a training ground, maybe even a factory, one meant to build something powerful, something the galaxy had forgotten. The Varelians were not easily shaken. They had seen planets consumed by black holes and species rise from extinction. But this was different. This was human. This was intentional. And in the quiet of orbit, above a planet filled with dreams, noise, and fury, the Orelon remained hidden, watching, waiting, wondering what Earth truly was, and what would happen if it ever realized its full potential. Jin Talers sat alone in the data chamber of the Orelon, surrounded by glowing streams of human history. Hours had passed, then days, yet she couldn't stop digging. The deeper she went, the more disturbing the patterns became. At first, her curiosity had guided her. She had seen primitive tribes evolve into global powers, watched languages multiply and vanish, witnessed grand empires fall only to give rise to others stronger than before. She studied their art, their science, their stories. but it was the violence that stood out. Every age, no matter how bright, was born from the shadow of war. Civilizations clashed endlessly, over land, over belief, over survival. But what struck Jin most was not the destruction, it was the transformation that followed. After every catastrophe, Earth's people didn't just rebuild. They improved. Their technology leaped forward. Their medicine advanced. Their ideas sharpened, as if pain itself was a fuel for growth. To the Varelians, who had long moved beyond war, this pattern was deeply unsettling. On their world, progress had come through peace, through shared understanding. But on Earth, suffering had become a ladder to climb higher. Jin couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a natural way of life. It felt too precise, too deliberate, like someone, or something, had placed humanity in a cage and poked it endlessly to see what would happen. She presented her findings to the ship's AI core, a powerful system called Sarah, designed to detect anomalies and map evolutionary paths. Sarah's response came within minutes, and it wasn't what Jin had expected. The ally confirmed that Earth's timeline showed repeated conflict accelerations, moments where massive wars had suddenly driven explosive growth in technology and culture. World wars, space races, pandemics, all followed by golden ages. But that wasn't the most alarming part. Sarah displayed a comparison graph. Earth's development path didn't align with natural planetary evolution models. It instead mirrored ancient records of genetically modified species created during the Forgotten Galactic Wars, species built for combat, programmed to grow stronger through adversity, and meant to be deployed as weapons of survival. Earth's data matched those long-lost blueprints in frightening detail. Jin's hands trembled as she leaned back, processing the truth. Earth's history wasn't just chaotic. It was suspiciously efficient, like training exercises disguised as random disasters. Sarah used the word conditioning. The species had been tested again and again, and each time they passed. Each time they adapted. It wasn't luck. It was a system. Jin wondered if the humans even knew what they were becoming. Or worse, if some part of them did know and had simply accepted it. The rest of the Orelon crew reviewed the findings with growing concern. The calm mission of observation was slowly turning into one of alarm. The Varelians had thought they were studying a young race that needed guidance, maybe friendship. Now, they weren't sure if they were standing in the presence of something far older in purpose, something that had been waiting, watching, preparing. Every new discovery added another piece to a dark puzzle. The strange obelisks hidden deep beneath Earth's surface. The dreams some human scientists recorded, filled with blueprints for devices not yet built. The global instinct to turn even peaceful tools into weapons. It was as if humanity had been shaped not to avoid extinction, but to face it and win. Outside the ship, Earth rotated slowly beneath them, quiet and beautiful from above. Lights twinkled across continents. Storms swirled gently over oceans. It looked peaceful, but inside the Orelon, peace was the last thing anyone felt. The more they learned, the more fear replaced curiosity. Jin couldn't help but whisper the question everyone was thinking, but no one dared to speak aloud. What if humanity wasn't made to live, but to endure? And if that's true, what are they enduring for? Beneath the endless stretch of Earth's Pacific Ocean, something ancient had been sleeping, and the Varelians had no idea their quiet scan would wake it. It began with a flicker, an energy pulse so brief that the ship's sensors almost ignored it. But Sarah, the ship's AI, locked onto the anomaly. The signal came from deep beneath the ocean floor, far below human reach, hidden under layers of tectonic plates and volcanic rock. As the Orelon focused its instruments, the signal grew clearer, revealing a frequency older than anything Earth should be able to produce. It carried a code that didn't match any known Earth technology, language, or system, but it did match something else. Sarah began cross-referencing the data with forbidden archives, ancient and sealed records from before the Varelians had become explorers. That's when the name surfaced, Galactic War Code Alpha Primus, a cryptic transmission format used by a precursor race long believed to be extinct, one responsible for the creation of biological weapons so advanced they were erased from history by fear alone. The signal beneath the Pacific wasn't just old, it was pre-human. Jin and the crew stared in disbelief as 3D holograms reconstructed the source, a massive hexagonal vault buried under the seabed, humming with unreadable energy signatures and strange, pulsating light patterns that moved like language. The AA dubbed it the Origin Vault. No human technology had detected it, not because they weren't capable, but because the vault had hidden itself, cloaked in such a way that only a non-human eye could spot it. It had waited, undisturbed, for millions of years. Jin felt her breath catch as more data unfolded. The vault wasn't a prison or a tomb. It was a relay, a broadcasting system, quietly sending out codes to Earth's surface, signals that matched the sudden evolutionary spikes seen throughout human history. Each code aligned with a major event: mass extinction, world wars, industrial revolutions, even the rise of the internet. The vault hadn't just existed alongside humanity, it had guided them, pushed them forward in bursts, always after great suffering. The conclusion was impossible to ignore. Earth wasn't the natural cradle of life the Varelians had hoped for. It was a carefully managed forge, and humanity wasn't a random result of evolution. They were being sculpted, shaped, pressured, like blades in fire. Jin stood before the projection, her thoughts racing. Who had built the vault? Why had they chosen Earth? And what was the end goal of such ruthless shaping? Sarah provided an answer, one that made the crew fall into a heavy silence. The data matched the design of an ancient species fabrication protocol, a tool used by precursor civilizations to craft life forms with specific traits, not for peace or survival, but for war. The vault had been broadcasting selective challenges to Earth for eons, and humanity had answered each one with resistance, adaptation, and eventual dominance. They weren't being taught, they were being tested. Jin whispered her theory to the others. Earth was never a home, it was a forge. A planet-wide facility meant to create the ultimate apex species, self-reliant, brutal when necessary, but intelligent, imaginative, and unbreakable. As the vault continued its silent pulse beneath the ocean, the Orelon hovered in orbit, unsure whether they had just uncovered a relic or awakened something that should have remained buried. One question now haunted every member of the crew: if this was a weapon factory, had the weapon already been finished? The silence that followed the discovery of the Origin Vault did not last long. In the days after the Orelon intercepted its broadcast, Earth began to shift, but not in a way anyone could see from orbit. It started quietly, deep inside the minds of those humanity trusted most: scientists, engineers, military strategists, even students in distant universities. They began to experience vivid dreams, mechanical visions filled with unfamiliar machines, glowing blueprints etched in golden light, and whispers of languages they had never studied. Some woke up with diagrams already sketched on nearby paper, not knowing why their hands had moved during sleep. Others started building strange devices, drawn by instinct they couldn't explain. Nations noticed this sudden wave of strange innovation, but no one could trace its source. Technology jumped ahead in weeks instead of years. Entire systems, once thought impossible, began forming in research labs across the globe. It was subtle, but together, all the changes pointed toward a direction, an invisible blueprint slowly activating itself inside humanity's collective mind. Sarah identified the pattern first and gave it a name: the Singularity Directive. It wasn't a program. It was a biological command, hidden within the human genome like a locked instruction, now activated by the Vault's transmission. Earth's greatest minds weren't just inventing, they were remembering. The Orelon watched in silence, horror growing in the minds of its crew. Earth was not simply evolving, it was awakening, following a path buried so deep, no human knew it existed, and they were moving fast. Devices appeared in human labs that bent magnetism, shaped energy fields, and pulled gravity into patterns that mirrored ancient galactic warfare tech. No one had taught them. They were building by instinct. One Vorelian, a systems engineer named Rel Mayer, couldn't take it anymore. He had spent his life trusting data, logic, and peace. Watching Earth suddenly leap toward an unknown goal, driven by something in their own bodies, was too much. He begged Jin and the others to shut it down, to destroy the link between the Aurelon and the Origin Vault before it was too late. When no one listened, he acted alone. In the middle of a quiet cycle, while the others studied new transmissions, Rel entered the main satellite control chamber. He overrode the safety protocols, rushed to disconnect the relay beam that fed the ship's scans into Earth's atmosphere. If he could stop the feedback loop, he believed he might stop the awakening. His hand reached for the core, then he vanished. Not in a burst of fire, not in a scream, but in absolute silence. One moment he was there, the next gone, disintegrated mid-action, atomized in place. No trace, no signal. The AI detected no weapon, no energy spike. It was as if something had watched him and responded. Sarah ran 1,000 scans in seconds, but found no cause. Jin stood frozen in the aftermath, staring at the empty space where her colleague had stood. The only trace left behind was a faint pulse, one matching the vault's signal exactly. The message was clear. To not interfere. Fear now gripped the crew. Earth wasn't passive. The experiment was aware of its observers. And worse, Earth wasn't reacting to humanity's evolution with surprise. It was following a plan written long before humans ever walked upright. A plan designed by something that had long since vanished, or perhaps had never left. As cities lit up with new inventions, as scientists continued to dream of machines from beyond the stars, the Aurelon watched helplessly. They had come in peace, hoping to witness the rise of a new ally. But now they faced a terrifying truth. The experiment had awakened, and it was only just beginning to remember what it was meant to become. Across Earth, the transformation was no longer hidden. What began as scattered inventions and silent dreams had turned into a coordinated shift. Humanity was no longer discovering new technology, they were activating it. Gravity no longer held them as tightly. Scientists created drives that folded space like cloth, bending the rules of motion itself. Energy weapons fueled by dark matter began appearing in prototypes that shouldn't have worked by any known science, yet they did, perfectly. Cities once divided by politics and fear suddenly united, as if following an unspoken instinct. The formation of the Earth Defense Coalition didn't come from treaties or pressure, but as a natural reaction, like a survival reflex. Leaders from every nation joined without debate, their minds clear, their goals aligned. Jin watched from orbit, her heart torn between awe and dread. Humanity didn't panic. They didn't question the knowledge suddenly blooming in their minds. It was as though they had always known it would come, as if some ancient memory locked within them had finally been triggered. They weren't confused. They were ready. Massive factories rose overnight. Swarms of nanotech the size of dust clouds drifted through test zones, repairing, scanning, replicating. Civilian satellites were repurposed into energy beacons. Entire continents buzzed with the hum of awakening power. But nothing was more terrifying than the obelisks. Towering structures of pure black stone erupted from deep within Earth's crust, piercing through oceans, mountains, and city outskirts. Not a single one was man-made. Humanity hadn't built them, yet every one of them responded to human commands, changing shape, powering up, aligning with the sky as if syncing with a countdown. Sarah scanned the obelisks and confirmed the worst. They shared core signatures with the Origin Vault, ancient and alien, likely placed long before recorded history. But now, for reasons no Virelian could understand, the obelisks had bonded to the human genetic structure. They responded to voice, thought, and even unconscious desire. Humanity didn't control the obelisks. They belonged to humanity, Or perhaps the obelisks had always known who they were waiting for. Jin stood at the observation deck, her eyes wide as she watched the black spires pulse with a deep, slow light. It was like watching giants rise from the planet's soul. She knew this was no longer about curiosity or first contact. Something far bigger was unfolding. The pieces of a plan millions of years old were falling into place. She sent one final message to the Varelian High Council, her voice steady but grim. "They are awakening," she said, "and they were never meant to be contained." No one on the ship spoke. Even Sarah remained quiet, as if overwhelmed by the scale of what it had discovered. Earth had played the part of a simple, chaotic world for so long. But now the truth was out, and that truth was dangerous. Humanity wasn't just evolving. They were claiming ownership of ancient tools meant for war on a cosmic scale. The Orelon had come expecting to guide a primitive species into the stars. Instead, they had found the rebirth of a force the galaxy had long forgotten. And now that force was preparing for something. Jin looked once more at the Earth, its surface glowing with networks of light, factories of power, and obelisks humming like ancient hearts. This was no longer just a world. It was a weapon coming back online. The Varelian Council, shaken by Jin's final message and terrified by the footage of Earth's sudden transformation, took no chances. With trembling hands and heavy hearts, they sent a pan-galactic distress signal, an emergency call not used in over 50,000 years, reserved only for the most catastrophic threats. The message surged across the stars, bouncing from relay to relay, reaching every major species, empire, and alliance within known space. What came next was unprecedented. From scattered corners of the galaxy, dozens of civilizations responded. Battle-hardened fleets from the Kerex combine, the crystalline warriors of Elith, and the gravity-bending dreadnoughts of the Hollow Accord all arrived at the edge of Sol system. Saturn's orbit became a sea of warships, thousands of vessels, bristling with weapons meant to crack planets, now standing shoulder to shoulder in a fragile alliance. They had come not to destroy Earth, not yet. They came to reason, to assess, and if needed, to contain. They feared what humanity had become, but they still hoped it could be stopped with words. From the shadows of Earth's moon, the Orelon held position, silent and watching. Jin Talus stood among her crew, filled with guilt and awe. She had not caused this, but her people had witnessed it, and maybe awakened it. Still, Earth remained calm. No warships rose into space. No first strikes were launched. No hostile energy signatures came from the glowing black obelisks now rising across the continents. Instead, a signal emerged from deep within the planet, clear and direct. Humanity responded, not with violence, but with an invitation. A signal opened a path for communication, and from that connection came a voice, powerful, calm, and unmistakably human. She appeared not as a hologram, but as a presence, a projection of perfect clarity into the minds of every commander, ambassador, and warrior among the fleets near Saturn. Her name was Ava Nocturne. She stood with eyes that burned like galaxies and a voice that held the weight of an ancient storm. She wore no armor, carried no weapon, but the stillness around her was more threatening than any gunship. And then she spoke. "We are not here to conquer," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "We are here to complete our purpose. Stand with us, or run." The silence that followed her message felt longer than it was. No one moved. No one dared. The fleets, built by thousands of years of war and fear, suddenly felt fragile, not from attack, but from the weight of what they were facing. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't a threat. It was truth. Humanity had not become a danger through conquest. They had become what they were always meant to be, and now they were simply continuing the program written into their DNA by an unknown power that predated stars. Jin watched the other species react, some with panic, others with defiance, and a few with quiet understanding. Sarah whispered a final analysis across the ship's systems. Ava Nocturne's voice carried embedded harmonics, matching the Vault's signal. She was its avatar, its chosen speaker. Her awakening meant the final phase had begun. Earth no longer saw itself as part of the galaxy. It saw itself as its reset. Humanity had no desire to rule, but they would not be stopped. The fleets near Saturn hesitated, unsure whether to fire, flee, or listen. And from below, Earth pulsed like a living engine, silent and waiting, as if daring the galaxy to make its choice. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for fire. But no weapons came. No fleets surged from Earth's orbit. No energy blasts tore through the stars. Instead, something far stranger and more profound unfolded. Ava Nocturne stood once more before the assembled species, not in anger, not with force, but with truth. And the truth shattered everything the galaxy thought it understood. Earth, it turned out, was never a cradle for life. It was a construct, a biological machine built eons ago by a civilization that vanished before time had a name. Its purpose was not domination, it was defense. A failsafe. A last line of resistance against the galaxy's greatest threat, not war, not extinction, but stagnation. The slow death that comes when growth ends, when creativity dies, when order becomes a cage. The galaxy had become quiet, too structured, too predictable. Empires had lasted too long, growing safe but stale. Advancement had stalled, innovation became fear. And so the sleeper was triggered. Earth had been designed to create something wild, something driven by chaos, conflict, survival, art, and curiosity all at once. It had succeeded. Humanity was the result, a species built to push every boundary, break every rule, and ask questions even when they had no answers. Now, with the Origin Vault fully awakened and the black obelisks humming across the Earth, the Celestial Reset Protocol activated. But it wasn't destruction, it wasn't annihilation. It was something far more powerful: transformation. A signal pulsed across space, touching every mind that listened. Those who opened their thoughts felt it. A spark. It was like fire, but without pain. It was a gift of chaos-driven imagination. Entire species suddenly felt the weight of limitation lift. Scientists dreamed of impossible ideas. Children invented solutions no teacher could explain. Civilizations that had remained unchanged for thousands of years suddenly began to move, evolve, and grow. It wasn't technology Earth offered, it was something deeper. A code of freedom. A will to challenge everything. To rise, fall, and rise again, stronger each time. The races who embraced the signal didn't lose themselves. They became more of what they were meant to be. Sharper, smarter, alive. But not all welcomed the change. Some empires closed their borders. Their leaders feared what they could not control. They declared the signal a threat, a corruption. But the protocol did not send ships to punish them. No armies moved. No warnings followed. And yet, those empires began to crack from within. Not by war, but by their own fear of change. Revolutions ignited. Truth spread. Their people, once numb and obedient, began to dream, to imagine, to question. Entire regimes fell, not by human hands, but by the awakening of their own citizens. What had once ruled through silence was torn apart by the noise of possibility. Jin Talas watched it all unfold from the Aurelon, her eyes wide, her heart full. She had come seeking a new species. She had found a new beginning. The galaxy did not fall. It shed its skin. It was reborn, not under human rule, but in the image of humanity's drive to evolve, to grow, to never stop reaching for what came next. And Earth simply pulsed, steady and silent, as if satisfied that its purpose was complete. Humanity had not taken the stars by force. They had changed them. They had reminded the galaxy of what it meant to move forward, to break, to rebuild, and to imagine something more. Not perfect, not peaceful, but alive in ways the stars had long forgotten. The ultimate surprise wasn't that humans were dangerous. It was that they were necessary.